Hello, and welcome to the Midwestern Geek in Cali podcast. I'm your host, Dan Stafford, podcasting from 42 Tardis Way in beautiful Temecula, California, which is summer's winter home. On this podcast, we'll talk about science, technology, science fiction, the paranormal, local entrepreneurship, regional entrepreneurship, occasionally politics, poetry, especially sci-fi poetry, and all other things geek. So get ready for the deep stuff because we're about to take a dive into the cosmos.
Hi, this is your host, Dan Stafford with the Midwestern Geek in Cali. I'm podcasting from a new location, my front porch in Temecula, California. I'm not sure if you can hear it on the mics, but you're probably picking up a little bit of the afternoon breeze coming up from San Diego here in Temecula. We're about 45 minutes north of San Diego, but it's a big valley here, and we get a breeze in the afternoon. Usually you can set your watch by. It's probably about 2:30 in the afternoon. It starts out pretty close, sometimes 3, sometimes quarter after 2, but it starts up and heads up the valley, and we're about at the north end of it here. So if it's 95 degrees at noon and maybe 100 degrees at 1:30, probably by 4 o'clock it's back down in the low 90s or even into the 80s, and it definitely cools down in the evening. We can get down in the 50s and 60s here even on really hot days. So interestingly enough, we get mostly about 6 hours of real heat here, and then it calms down and cools down pretty well. It starts off nice and cool early in the morning, heats up fast after 9 o'clock, and then cools back down pretty quickly after about 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So you're going to get a little bit of traffic noise out here, obviously, because I have, I'm on a residential street here, and folks are coming and going a little bit, but I figured it's worth it to be able to have class outside, seemed to me like that would be fun. So a little bit about why I haven't been on for a couple of months. I haven't really had a lot of luck with booking guests and hosts. I'm trying to find a co-host because I don't like the one-man show thing so well. I find it a little bit on the dry side. I like the back and forth with a guest or an interview or possibly a co-host. Not a whole lot of geek news that I want to talk about today because I haven't really done the research for it, but I wanted to get something online, try doing a little bit of pod and video casting from out here on the front porch, some nice scenery in the background now that I'm doing video as well. I'll be working on doing some video from 42 Tardis Way soon in the near future as well. I'm also doing something new. I joined the Civil Air Patrol as a senior volunteer. Senior meaning you're an adult in the terms of Civil Air Patrol. Anyone that's not high school or junior high school is considered a senior member, volunteer. And then junior high and high school, they're cadets. There's two sides to the Civil Air Patrol. There's the side where they train cadets similar to the ROTC. Now, and Civil Air Patrol is actually an official adjunct to the U.S. Air Force. I don't know the exact relationship, but it definitely is. The rank structure for senior volunteers and cadets follows the Air Force rank structure. Just because you have rank in one versus the other doesn't really mean if you were to go from, say, Cap to the Air Force, you're necessarily going to have identical rank. But volunteering in Cap can start someone off in the Air Force with a little bit higher rank, for sure. Cap also teaches the cadets aeronautics. They can learn all kinds of different, they learn things like color guard / honor guard. They do volunteerism, and then there's the serious side to the Civil Air Patrol. And what that is Civil Air Patrol will work in conjunction with, like, say, California Fire, helping with aerial spotting for firefighting. They'll work with the Sheriff's Department, aerial vehicles to help with aerial surveys and search and rescue, those types of things. They also work with FEMA for the same purposes. It's basically aerial surveying and search and rescue spotting, like the visual portion of things. They also have their own dedicated radio frequencies for communications. I'm going to be learning to be a communications officer within the Civil Air Patrol, as well as an IT officer. So I'll be doing training on dual tracks in Civil Air Patrol. And my squadron is Squadron 59, based out of the Hemet Ryan Airport. There's also Squadron 57 at March Air Reserve Base, north of here, up where the Air Museum is, near Paris, and in between Paris and Ontario. And I'm very much looking forward to it for many, many reasons. I've wanted to be involved in aviation since I was very young. I mean, we're talking 5, 6 years old. I knew I wanted to be a pilot, and then I ended up having to wear glasses for a lot of years, and everyone said, well, you're never really going to fly anything but cargo. And, being a 10-year-old kid at the time, I just took all that in and sucked it up and believed it. And well, I ended up getting a diploma in aircraft electronics and becoming a radar technician at 17 years old, and then working in telecommunications for 21 and a half years. Well, now, working with the Civil Air Patrol, this is kind of my way of getting back in and around aviation, which is my first love, as far as what to do career-wise, job-wise, interest-wise. So I'm thinking this is going to be a very good thing. I'll be working with the website for the Civil Air Patrol. I'll be working, obviously inventorying equipment and helping set up connectivity inside the squadron headquarters. Eventually, I'll be, talking and communicating with aircraft that we're coordinating with, and all kinds of other things. So, and it's really a lot of interesting stuff. It'll be good training for me. And it'll be interesting because eventually I'm going to be doing a podcast/videocast specifically for Civil Air Patrol. And I'm going to be working on setting all of that up soon. But that one, I'm going to ask other members and cadets in the squadron to be included, to be guests. And so it could bring out some interesting stuff. I'm going to ask some of the senior members for, like, interesting stories of things that they've done with Civil Air Patrol, ask them a little bit about Civil Air Patrol history, help educate the general public on what Civil Air Patrol does, because I don't think there's a very wide knowledge of the Civil Air Patrol in general, let alone specifics. So that should get interesting. Beyond Civil Air Patrol, I've also been looking for a full-time tech gig in order to kind of bolster my income. My business is making money, but not really enough to keep me paid. So while the business grows and probably beyond, I want to get a full-time gig, solid benefits, retirement package, stable pay to go along with the business, work my business outside of hours, all those things. Many, many reasons. I'm particularly hoping to get involved with working for the state of California in an IT-ish position or an IT position. Again, that'll bolster my training. It will also, help. Anything I can learn along those lines will help with my volunteerism for Civil Air Patrol. It will help me in my business endeavors. And it'll help me be a better and more solid member of the community and more able to help give back to the community in many ways, more than I'm already doing. That being said, I'd like to put out an open call to folks who would be interested in guesting on this podcast, who would be interested in possibly co-hosting this podcast as well. Obviously, if you're going to co-host, you would need to be local, in the local area, so that we could do a fairly regular co-hosted show. We may individually do segments outside of, separate from each other, but also I'd like the main show to be a co-hosted thing. I'm really not a huge fan of the one-man show format. I love the concept of this show. I love the artwork, the title. I'm learning a lot by just simply doing this show. Obviously, this is my first real attempt at podcasting. I want to let people know I'm still here. I'm not going to be doing podcast fade. I'm not going away. I may not be regular online all the time. I may not have a set schedule. Well, when I've got something to say, I'll be here. And there will be new episodes. Midwestern Geek in Cali is not going away anytime soon. That is for sure. I think one other thing that I want to mention on this show right now, my mind is a little bit on Puerto Rico. I know Houston got hit hard with the hurricanes. I know Florida got hammered pretty good, but Puerto Rico's really hurting, and those folks are U.S. citizens. So I'd like to see all of us geeks around the country kind of pull together and do whatever we can to help come up with ways to help Puerto Rico. Just saying, they're Americans. They deserve it. So, anyway, I think I'm going to call it a day on that one. Let it go, see how this turned out, and upload it. Thank you for listening.
This is your host, Dan Stafford, with a Midwestern Geek in Cali podcast. And I'd like to thank you for listening and welcome you to come back anytime you'd like. As always, you can find us at www.singingwire.net and also at Midwest Geek Cali on Twitter.